here we are back in Korea. The 2-week project has become almost a 6-month project. It's now early February. Let's cut up to speed, shall we? Right, so the bodice is nearly done. I have attached almost all of the lacing rings, which are a reproduction of an archaeological find, plus there's lots of visual evidence of these in various portraits, actual portraits, not, allegorical portraits. And I ended up settling on I did end up settling on spiral lacing in the front. And that edge is really nice and strong, even though it's flexible. So once I finished the final lacing ring on that, which I attached using a sort of buttonhole stitch around the rings, around the rings of the rings. And once we do that, then I guess I'm going to have to actually seriously ponder the finishing of all of these edges. So here's the deal, everyone. On Osana's Gamurra, basically this is just turned up, and then it's finished with this band. After the skirt is attached, it's finished with this band that goes all the way around. But my wool is very feisty, and it has created this really, because I rolled it under to make sure that those edges were all nice and clean, and I really did want that soft boning effect, right? But because I did that, it's now a bit like there's boning that goes all the way to the bottom here. So I either am going to have to trim away that entire, so we'll get a focus, I'll do a layover. I'm either gonna have to trim away the bottom part of the rolled hem or the rolled seam, or I'm gonna have to come up with another finishing technique for the bottom, because just if I fold this in half now at the 3 points, 5 points, because it's also then here in the front, you end up with these really thick points that are going to kind of press into my waist ahead of the rest of the bodice, and especially it's going to create extra bulk around my waistline, which I don't really want. So what I'm thinking is that I'm going to bind the bottom here also in the matching wool, and then I'm going to whip stitch the pleated skirts into that bottom bound edge. Now, I have no evidence for the 15th century that this was done. I have no visual evidence of it. And Osana's is not that way. Osana's Gamurra is not that way at all. But that may have to be the solution I'm going to have to come up with for this particular bodice, just because of the nature of this, the way the seams have turned out, how thick they are and how heavy they are. And I definitely don't want that thickness doubling up. I don't need that. I don't want that around my waist. I think that will probably create points that will then bear into my waist once this is all laced up nice and tightly, and it will not feel particularly good. So that's probably what we're going to end up doing there. And then of course with the other edges, we've already talked about how I'm going to bind those. So basically the entire thing is going to be bound, and then I will attach the skirts, because the last thing I want to be doing is attach the skirts and then fiddle with the binding around all of these openings. So first we bind and finish up all of the various openings, and then we will attach the skirts. Okay, well, let me see, anything else here about this? No. Okay. Sleeves. The sleeves, I ended up settling on a sleeve, and it's inside out so you can see the contrast a little bit better. I ended up settling on attaching, completely closing this upper part, at least for now, of the sleeve, the upper half of the sleeve. And then for the lower one, I actually went with spiral lacing all halfway up the sleeve. And then next I'm going to whip stitch this together, so that you end up with this little space here, basically, that's going to, through which snowy white linen will poof alluringly. We all know I like to have my snowy white linen. Hopefully it will be snowy and white. Oh, probably not, considering what I do to clothes. It'll probably be more like grimy and sweat covered. Anyway, so we did spiral lacing, and there was definitely a remembrance curve. It's apparently been a while since I've done lacing holes, I guess. And you can definitely see a difference in the ones that I started with and the ones I ended with. Well, you know, like I said, it's been 8 years since I've done this now. It hasn't been 8 years since I've done lacing holes. I don't remember the last time I did lacing holes. It was on a kirtle, probably. It was probably my blue kirtle. And that blue kirtle, yeah, that's been 5 years, 5.5 years since I made that kirtle. Yeah, so maybe it's been a while since I've done lacing holes. Right, so that is where the sleeves are. Now, the nice thing about the whip stitching that I've done here is that if I decide, and I probably will later, that I want more openings along the upper part of the sleeve for alluring puffs of white, then I can just cut out the whip stitching and do other things, because as you recall, the sleeves are entirely finished, entirely independently finished as one open flat piece of fabric. So that gives me all sorts of flexibility with what I can do now. I have less flexibility about reworking this area down here with lace holes, because lace holes are set in a spiral pattern, which means it will be very obvious if I do something different. I could, of course, put lacing rings over top of that in a different pattern if I want. I guess there'll still be lace holes there. Okay. So then I guess finishing up the bodice first, finishing up the sleeves, and then we'll move on to the skirts, because there's no reason to even really ponder the skirts until the bodice is done. Because as I said, if it would make no sense for me to attach the skirts and then finish everything on the bodice. Efficiency of operations, people, very important thing to remember. Anything you feel I need to include in there?
I got nothing.
Okay, sometimes you, oh, I already did one. Look, I finished this sleeve already. So this sleeve is done. It's been so long since I worked on it, and there's been so much trauma in my life that I'd completely forgotten that one of these sleeves is entirely done. So maybe I'll pop an overlay on that so you can see how it looks at this stage. Oh, wow, that's fun. Yeah, 2-week project. 6-month project, whatever. I mean, time. What's time on a geologic scale? Yeah. Okay, well, onward with the stitching.